here out of Taeyoon, something that forced him to be a little bit more aggressive. He played a game on the Kai'Sa during the placements, looked really good, and it actually was one of the games that they ended up winning, and I think that he just looks at his best when he has to go get involved with the rest of the team. I'd like to see WE play themselves quite an aggressive composition right here. The Aurora would certainly fit in with that kind of style. Just all of your champions right now are looking to go straight on into the backline. I would be very surprised if we don't see the same sort of style from the remaining pickups that we will see. Same sort of thing from the support and the top lane. JDG, they're much more about poke at the moment. Not going to be a straight up all-in kind of composition, but they are relatively squishy at the moment and could fall to WE's overwhelming aggression if they're not careful.
Yeah, you know, the thematic counter to poke is hard engage, and so that's what WE have lined up for themselves right now. It looks like JDG gonna round out their composition just a little bit more with its Xin, some more skirmishing in the early game, as well as, you know, an ability to engage, start a fight kind of on his own. As we get into the second phase of bans, looking for bot lane, for support pickups here for both of these teams. That's certainly one of those lanes that we're going to be seeing some bans towards.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing with the Jhin, right, is that you can actually go toe-to-toe with Monki on this Neferi. A lot of the champions do get poked out by it quite heavily. This is one that can actually go and try to skirmish alongside it. It's still going to be a little bit of a risk to do. It's a bit of a 50-50, but it's not going to completely lock you out of these skirmishes, as we now see quite a lot of these tanky pickups potentially being taken off of the board. The Jace still is flexible between the top and the mid lane, and it is interesting that WE going to take away the Galio, potentially thinking that this is going to be Arla's Jace right here. I think that makes a lot of sense, and getting themselves a little bit of extra tankiness into this mid lane and not necessarily having to put it all on missing does work for this composition.
Yeah, well, I don't know. That Galio is certainly one of the bigger options there if they wanted to go for more of a beefier frontliner in for Scout. Vampires Rakan going to get taken away, and we'll see what the last target here is for WE. In terms of what WE could continue to select, most likely looking for a top laner and a support, and still looking for a matchup into that Jace. That Sion that we were talking about, not going to be available. As now we head over to JDG's side, likely to pick up something for missing. The Rel provides some much needed hard engage.
Yeah, and it works very well with this composition. You can poke everybody out, then head in as missing. He does need to be careful not to get caught out. I've seen him on the Rel quite a lot, get himself into situations where he really shouldn't be at. WE, they also do need themselves a support right here. Vampire looked absolutely best on the Neeko. The Neeko was the best Vampire performance that we got from him during the placements. Everything else was a little bit hit or miss. We said it was a little bit iffy on some of these tankier engaged tools, but the Neeko did look great. The Ambessa, one of those strongest top laners that we've actually been seeing go through a couple of the drafts recently. It has a pretty rough time into the Jace for a while. You can all in him once you hit that level 6 though, but it will be the Leona to round this out. This is a composition that can go diving in overall. The only person who can't really follow that up initially is Vampire, but hopefully he's going to be starting these team fights off for them.
Yeah, with the Solar Flare, you can be the one to initiate it, even if you are a little bit further away. That's the difference in terms of value that a Leona provides versus something, you know, like a Rel, which has to be a little bit closer to begin and engage. You have a lot of long-range follow-up as well with things like the Ambessa, and then a Kai'Sa jumping over on the top as well. So I do like what what WE have pulled out for themselves. However, what it means is that they're going to have to probably win early off of Monki on this Neferi, and you're trying to do that against a team like JDG. And if that doesn't happen, well, all of a sudden, you're playing up against a late game Victor, a late game Ezreal, and a late game Jace. That is definitely never a recipe for success.
No, indeed. But at the same time, I think we would have been saying the same thing in every single matchup for WE. Whatever team they were up against, it's going to be all on Monki, whoever they're playing. And right here, on this Neferi, one of the best pickups that we've seen for him on a very aggressive composition that wants to go all in, lots of dive potential. It's at least going to be fun. It's at least going to be interesting. I would be very surprised if we just watch WE roll over and die and let this game happen to them. They're at least going to be trying right here. Like you said, though, if they begin to fall behind, this composition really doesn't have any recourse for getting itself back into a game later on.
And so the champions loaded back onto the Rift. We are here for game number 2. Here in our second series of the day on LPL English is JDG taking on WE. Best of 3 here. JDG currently up 1-0. And WE, hey, shout out to them. They decided to get a little wild here in this draft. They're going to play very aggressive. It's going to be all about the skirmishing, specifically in this early game from Monki on the Neferi. Very excited to see it. On the other side, though, for JDG, they've got the late game insurance. They're just going to make sure they hold the line, don't lose this game too early on.
Indeed. It may well be a similar story to what we saw in game number 1. Hopefully with a different outcome. Would be really fun to get to see a third game. It's always fun to watch what WE can do, even if they haven't necessarily been the best team recently. See a ton of pings going on towards the top side of the map right here for JDG. They've actually sent all 5 members up here, potentially looking for a bait with Ala.
Oh, you know what it was? It's because they did this, because WE did a similar thing to them last time. Taeyoon and Vampire tried to chunk out missing a little bit on the top side, and so they're trying to spot somebody out up there too. Try to give WE a taste of their own medicine, and unfortunately for them, did not work out as they'll head back to base empty-handed. And the interesting thing that I want to follow here is what the junglers do, what Monki and Shun end up executing on in terms of their path. For Monki, finding kills early on is going to be very important, as you want to try to get this snowball rolling as fast as possible. Similar thing for Shun, except you have some of that late game insurance that we talked about in the Victor and the Ezreal specifically.
Absolutely, and with WE, it's a little bit tricky here with the lanes they've drafted for themselves to know where exactly Monki's going to be able to look to try go get those ganks off. Now, there are a couple of lanes where you're likely to be getting pushed in. Potentially in this top lane could be looking for an overextended Ala, but at the same time, dives have really been what WE have loved to focus on. Monki loves a dive, Cube loves to try to fight back from them. So if you're not constantly being able to put yourself in a position where you can get dives off, WE, they've struggled a little bit with actually finding these early priority plays. We'll have to see what the actual pathing is going to be. Monki has started towards the bottom side of the map, potentially looking to go up towards the top side. Is going to be exactly followed right here by Jun though. And so if you end up in a counter gank situation, that's oftentimes where this Jin Zhao can really shine.
Yeah, and so for Monki, who does clear a little bit quicker overall on this Nefiri, going to be an interesting thing to follow, but more interestingly here for WE, their bot lane is getting pathed away from by their jungler and are taking a beating right now from Peyz and missing.
Yeah, they really are. The poke that you can get out of this is going to be huge. The all-in potential, of course, of WE's bot lane is very strong, but they need to be careful to pick the correct opportunity to go for that. Missing, though, if he does try to get a little bit too aggressive, that could really open things up for WE. It's quite tricky to get away as a rel anyway, especially into something like the Leona. Scout.
What they need to do, find some kills like this.
Big
Doesn't
damage.
look like it's enough to burst down Scout. The bleed is going to take him to below 100 HP. Really nice discipline from Scout, knowing he was not going to die and actually saving his flash. He'll be able to teleport right back to lane.
Monki, though, is going to be well aware right now of where Jun is at. It's actually going to force the red buff reset, force him to take a slightly different pathing around right here. Nobody in this top side is going to be surprised by where the junglers are. Would be very shocking if we end up seeing a gank work out at this point for either of them, as they are so on vision. But like you said, it was nice from Scout to know that he didn't need to flash, didn't need to panic to get away. Still though, trying to teleport that early on, not going to be ideal.
You just ignite that guy? Did you see that?
Yeah, Vampire.
You just ignited a full HP Peyz without nade carry being there. Nice job, Vampire. Interesting. Anyway,
so very Vampire
Karis teleports back in. And immediately gets a big chunk of his HP bar taken away. Yeah, very Vampire thing to do. I agree.
Baffling. Either way, still not going to change too much at the moment, of course. Ignite, pretty short cooldown, already a quarter of the way through, so, you know, you'll get that one back relatively soon, and we are actually going to see these bot lanes move around right now. Top lane is heading down towards the bottom side of the map. Bot lane is moving on up, with the first Drake going to be in Ocean, not necessarily one of the highest priorities to try to pick up, and so the Grubs in a minute 40 could well be the thing that these teams are going to be looking to try play around. The skirmish potential out of both of these compositions is very high. I think you're going to have to be incredibly careful with both of these teams to not over-aggress and get yourself into a bad situation where you've gone way too far in, just can get taken down by all of the skirmishing power, all of the damage available to these comps. Right now, Taeyoon, he's still going to get pushed around a little bit in this bottom lane. He is going to be joined up by Vampire in just a second's time, but this minion wave is really almost completely unapproachable for Taeyoon.
Yeah, and if you're WE, you want to fight around like this first spawn of the Grubs. 6 minutes in, this is like you want to try to skirmish here with the Nefiri. But already, you look at the gold deficits, and you're down basically in every position at this point. You know,
Yep.
right now it's 2 waves for Ala right now in the lead. 1 wave for Scout in the lead. 2 to 3 waves for Peyz over Taeyoon. So in terms of the amount of resources and the strength of the champions, it's not necessarily going to be early game versus late game. It's going to be just who has more money at this point. And right now that very much goes towards JDG.
Really is. It's been JDG just getting themselves into these good positions overall in their laning phases. Nothing too much, you know, it's not a massive advantage for anybody from JDG WE. They've not fallen behind, they're not getting solo killed constantly. Karis actually could get a kill here. Yeah, has to.
Hey, nicely
flash.
done. Getting that XP advantage is going to be big. Monki dashes away after the wind becomes lightning, connects onto him from Shun.
Vampire.
No re-engage. Vampire standing very far forward, as you are potentially alluding to. Has to flash away from the stun of missing, and that's a key cooldown down.
Yep, exactly. Vampire had no reason to step.
Oh no! With this flash going in!
Oh,
Jeez,
Shun missed the
made
second
my heart
wind
stop for a
become
second.
lightning. Monki, you can't do that to your support. After he just blows his flash, if you then immediately punt him into the back line and he dies there, that would be so funny. Actually, pretty close was Taeyoon to being able to steal that one away.
Yeah, W would love to at least take one of these grubs away. We'll see if they try to go for an engage. It is a 4v3 on the top side of the map, and so with pushing them away, will be W actually getting one of the grubs, and that might be big for a couple of reasons. Of course, it gives you that advantage, but it also prevents one of those feats of strength from going over to JDG.
Grapes. Was it Monki or was it Vampire who hit that blast card?
I know, so right now it's a very quiet game. I would love for the Huya observing team to just just go find a replay of that.
Because I don't know who hit that blast
We need to launch
code.
some sort of investigation, some sort of report into that. Because that was
exactly. If it was Monki, that's hilarious. If it was Vampire who punts himself into the back line, yikes. You know, like, that would be... I mean, it would be funny. Shun actually going to get jumped right here. Vampire is in the area.
We're seeing some of the power of this Nefiri in the duels. However, Shun does a lot of damage in return. Both Conquerors have been procced, and now a big blast, shock blast from Ala is going to force Monki down pretty low. He heals up rather nicely off the blast, off the Scuttle Crab. But here comes Ala, unrelenting in his aggression. With that to the skies, will force Monki away and allow for Shun to pick up that Rift Scuttler and get level 6 first.
Yeah, really good to be able to just push everybody away. It's these small advantages that teams like JDG are able to pick up for themselves here. You can see it was all 100 gold in the advantage, now 200 gold in the advantage. Just slowly but surely ticking up right now. All in all, it's come out to about 1,000 gold of a lead for JDG. They were able to pick themselves up 2 of the grubs, not all 3, not going to be too bad so far for WE, but you've also got your jungler in the area right now and a potentially pushing wave in the bottom lane if Peyz are missing Wanted to be able to start yourself up right here onto the Drake.
Okay. This is your angle. No flash on Scout. This is the opportunity to find a kill,
Nice.
and they do. Monki uses the Nefiri ultimate to pick up first blood for WE.
There we go. That's what we wanted to see out of WE. Monki being proactive, being able to pick up that kill, and also getting it for himself right here. Exactly what you want to have happen on the Nefiri. Of course, that does open up that Drake potential for JDG. They're going to be able to go grab that one for themselves right here. So it's not going to be traded for nothing. But still, punishing that lack of flash on Scout is exactly what we wanted to see.
Yeah, so that's one small little thing that we can potentially look for. Meanwhile, in the bottom lane, going in on the Peyz just a little bit, as Vampire tries to make sure that this wave is going to be locked down nicely. True Shot Barrage will tongue Taeyoon down to pretty low, and that will also allow for Shun to pick up this dragon on the bottom side. So objectives as well as HP and CS on the bottom side of the map, still going well for JDG.
Absolutely, but still, it's something. We're getting to see some good aggressive plays out of WE. They didn't die, you know, in any of the issues with Vampire, although, having said that...
Might be a bit of a curse here. There goes Vampire. Gets exhausted, gets Magnet Storm, still
Although-
actually alive for a long time missing. Has to get away from the tower aggro, and now Shun in a bit of a sticky situation as well. Taeyoon still has a killer instinct, going to use it, but still gets knocked up. He flashes away, picks up 1 kill, missing. Should be a trade, but no! He barely gets away from tower range to allow for a double kill to go to Peyz.
Oh, that was so close. One more auto attack was all that was needed for Taeyoon to be able to pick up that kill. It was well played on the counter to that dive, but JDG, like you said, still going to be able to pick up 2 kills, and they go exactly where you need them to be. actually have a great cinematic look at Monki ulting in right here onto Scout. This is fun. I love when we get these little extra camera angles during the replays. Very dramatic for the death of the victor right there. The game, 2 for 2 in terms of the kills. The gold advantage still significantly in the favour of JDG. How early we are.
We're seeing more advantages for JDG displayed up in the top lane, actually. Oh, Cube.
What?
Cube, do we know what the ability does, my friend? Maybe he was trying to anticipate a... You know what? No, here's my cope. Here's my cope. Cube was anticipating a flash from Ala behind him to go for an E backwards or something. Go for the insect. As I say that, looks like Monki might have found outshone again. It's actually WE to pick up the feat of warfare here in this game. Peyz issues some damage back, but with that numbers advantage with the jungler down, it should mean that WE get first dibs on these grubs.
I like that, Cope. I think you're right. You know? I don't think that was a misclick out of Cube. I think it just looks really funny, but you're probably correct in that one. Like I said, it is going to be all 3 of these grubs going on over to WE because they're able to pick up that kill onto Jun. But the tower in the bot lane falling incredibly low at the moment with WE having the warfare.
Wow, he just, Giga Chad held his Hex Flash for like 3 seconds in vision, and still actually forced the flash out of Monki, who was only able to pick up 2 of those 3 grubs, by the way, so that will be an even trade most likely after Shun has respawned and takes control of this top side river.
Oh, and this game, considering how much it was in the favour of JDG in the first one, WE, they're actually fighting back. Monki looking really good right now, stepping up again, could potentially go for another play.
Hey. Keep sending it. Why not? Solar Flare going in on the missing. He's getting crowd control locked to oblivion, and Taeyoon will pick him up with the Acathian Rain. Grub still available, as Jun wasn't able to take it down, and WE might be able to pick up all 3.
Monki so proactive right here on the Netheria. I think it's been his best champion. This and the Skarner have been amazing looks right now for this guy, and showing up in this game number 2 versus JDG. As we've been saying, this is the first series that we're seeing out of WE. Really odd in terms of the way that this split has worked out. FPX, they've played 3 games already. WE, this is the first one that we're seeing from them. And so they're still going to be warming up into the split number 2. Good looking game from them so far. They had 6 good minutes in the first game. They've got at least 12.5 so far in this one.
Hey, if you double it each time, then eventually you're going to get to a win, right? So that's the hope for WE over the course of this series, over the course of this split. Of course, getting a good opportunity here to play in this Ascension group. Get some of the best teams that we have here in the LPL. So far, putting up a good fight against JDG here in game number 2. However, in terms of the gold, it still is JDG ahead by a fair margin, with that first tower also going over to Ala down in the bottom lane.
Yeah, they're just able to extend these advantages through the individual lanes. They're just up by quite a lot in terms of CS. I mean, look at the bottom lane CS gap. It's massive, about 30 at the moment, I think it was. They're now going to be pushing forwards right here, trying to take away this red buff from WE. Monki's in the area, though.
Vampire going in once again, finds a stun only onto missing. Smite secured for the red buff by Monki. And Vampire should be able to escape with his life. Not enough closing the gap available for JDG. On the top side, Karis taken rather low by Scout. He's going to have to head back to base. Dragon up in 25 seconds. Will be just the second one here for JDG if they pick it up. So WE don't necessarily need to fight for it.
No, they could sit back and just allow WE to pick this one up, get themselves a little bit more scaling. They've got some great scaling on their composition as well. At the same time, though, kind of giving over anything, conceding anything to WE right here feels bad because they've got themselves a sort of composition that spikes at 2 items very, very hard as well. They're going to be in a great spot. And even now, to be honest, with those eclipses completed onto both Cube and Monki, they're in good spots to be able to go for fights if you open up the opportunity. Jun is at least going to start this Drake. He's going to be fully on vision though, so I'm not sure he's going to want to go straight for this one right now without any awareness of where the rest of WE may be hiding. Vampire.
You know they're hiding because they always want to be fighting. As Vampire has been using that Hex Flash basically off of cooldown to try to look for some plays, playing very aggressively on this front line, basically treating his life like it doesn't really matter. But so far, it's actually him setting up kills for his team, as Karis finds a kill yet again onto missing. who gets caught out for the second time in a row and should allow for WE to pick up this Drake.
Yeah, straight on over to the Drake, go WE, and we said potentially JDG could just abandon this one. Instead, they tried to stand around to fight for it. I really like the positioning right there out of Vampire, actually. He kept walking down, making it look potentially like he was going for Jun, and then decides to E straight back up and pick up the kill. Really well played there, and getting themselves the Drake is going to be very nice. The gold lead still in the advantage for JDG, though. WE, despite the fact that they're getting themselves some extra stats, good couple of kills and things like that, they're just not quite able to break past the CS leads that formed during the early laning phase.
And it feels like WE have nearly abandoned the philosophy of laning phase at this point. All has been able to take a turret bot and top lane at this rate. Over 10 CS per minute. You can see it's at 170 right now as he heads back after a reset. And on the other side, Cube has like 110. So he's like 50 CS down against his laner. 20 to 30 is kind of the deficit in mid and bot, but it's become very clear that what WE want to do is try to overgroup maybe a little bit and try to find picks that could lead to them taking objectives and finding numbers advantages in fights.
Exactly. If they can find themselves those number advantages once they get into these team fights, it's going to make things a lot easier. They've also got the potential to try for a little bit of split pushing as well if they want to drag members of the opposition around. Right now, we've got the Herald up and available. Ages until the next Drake, ages until the Atakan. So it really is only going to be this Herald to try to fight for at the moment. As WE, I think you want to go for these fights. You're in a very strong position at the moment. You're kind of hitting those power spikes that you want to be. And Monki's been playing this game out great so far. Can Vampire find the engage, though, to start things off?
See Monki, the only player on WE that's currently up in gold ahead of his lane of his respective opponent. A teleport is coming in from Allah. He's the strongest player in this game, I would say, by a decent margin. You can see it there with that accelerated shock blast. Already taking Taeyoon down to half. Shun waiting to try to potentially steal away this Rift Herald. He's going to be a little bit far away, but might be here for a fight. Monki's going to be able to collect the eye. And now here comes the engage. Teleport comes in again from the bottom side. It's down, joining the fray. But now WE can just fully collapse upon the flank of Allah and potentially just take this chase down. It's Monki picking up yet another kill as JDG were waiting around for way too long before they decided to make a move.
Yeah, it was really odd from JDG where they were just sat there waiting. Like you said, they may well be able to catch out onto either Cube or Vampire. I think Vampire's just going to fall right here, but it's really not going to be the end of the world. Maybe Monki wants to re-engage.
Like maybe WE want to fight this. He's on the Cube right now. Vampire will be the sacrifice. Here comes the Magnus Storm from missing, but now Monki's here. Taeyoon in the back line as well. Could potentially go in with the killer instinct. Finds it on
there he is.
There goes Taeyoon. He finds the shutdown. And WE are still alive in this one. Monki poking with the dogs. And Cube still continuing to try to chase down Shun. Monki, Monki. He eats a wind, becomes lightning. Shun can potentially E in to pick up a kill, but the Nefiri will not fall. WE are up 8-3 in kills right now, Bloxer.
And they're only down by about 1,000 gold. This game is still so incredibly close. And JDG make another mistake. I thought they were just going to be able to pick up that kill onto Vampire. But instead, WE, they don't want to abandon their boy. They go back to try for the play and actually are able to turn that one around. We end up watching the top half of this fight during the live moments. The really nice engage that we got out of Taeyoon. What happens on the bottom side of this fight? Because Monki gets jumped right here and then ends up taking a huge chunk of damage. Jun flashes over the wall, doesn't quite manage to pick up that kill. And then, yeah, what we watched previously with all the action happening towards the top side. Taeyoon, he was really, really quiet in game number 1. On this Kai'Sa, you can't do that. You can't try to sit back. You have to go in. And it was great to see him be aggressive in that one. Actually use the ulti to go forwards and helps to pick up another couple of kills for his team.
Taeyoon and Peyz, I'm sure they have interacted multiple times, both here, you know, in China, and also, you know, they were both coming up in the academy system in Korea together for a number of years as well, whether it was with Freon here for Taeyoon or for Genji for Peyz. So for these guys, getting an opportunity now to play in LPL, although they've had very different upbringings in terms of their careers in the LCK beforehand, but now on a similar level in terms of what their expectations are for this team, for their respective teams. JDG, despite being ahead in gold, making some uncharacteristic mistakes at this point. Like they were a little bit hesitant to go in around that Rift Herald. They either should have let it go and made a play on the other side of the map, or gone for the fight a little bit earlier. Speaking of fights, we almost got another one here as a nice arcane shift away from Peyz to make sure he does not get hit by that public execution.
Getting hit by that would have been almost certainly a death sentence right there. We are, though, going to see this Rift Herald heading down into the bottom lane. This tower will fall. Are they going to be able to get another charge off of it? I would be surprised. Instead, no WE. They're just going to pull back. Drake, though, spawning in under 10 seconds time. Picking this one up would be huge right now. Hextech Soul, massive for whichever team is going to be able to pick this one up, especially with such heavy skirmishing, fighting-based compositions.
Here comes an ultimate here. Once again, Monki going on to scout. Nice buffer. We're with the untargetable. Here comes Cube as well on the Ambessa. And Scout is down. Missing will fall in addition. And Sean is stuck in a 1v4. And Peyz can only watch as the jungler goes down. The Mystic Shot's just not going to cut it. On the back end of things, it's a 1v1 kill for Ala as Taeyoon will fall without burning a summoner spell. But WE winning the fight outright. And they'll be able to pick up another dragon.
Yeah, but still, JDG, they trade it. Like you said, the 1v1 kill from Ala. I don't know why Taeyoon was caught out right there. Really unfortunate as the Kai'Sa to just get jumped fully by this very strong Jace. And they also get that tier 2 tower in the mid lane to JDG. They keep themselves in the advantage in terms of gold, but it feels like the objectives in the fights are just falling right here for WE. If they could just claw themselves into a little bit of a gold and as such item advantage, they'd be in complete control of this game.
We'll get the full replay here of Ala.
Does he?
Seemed like Taeyoon was trying to find a flank and he just gets face checks.
Yeah, can't do that. Cannot do that. You can see at this point he's realized that he's just dead. Could potentially have tried to flash over that wall, run away, decided it was not going to be worth it. Can't do that. Can't face check a Jace, not when he's this strong. 2 items completed right here on Ala.
And that's the funny part about the way these fights have been going, is because Ala really hasn't been involved in many of them. He's either been doing his own thing, or picking up a solo kill, or getting any of the towers. And he's super fed. Look at him right now. 2K ahead of Cube, who honestly, in his own right, is having a good game. But he's 2,000 gold behind his lane opponent because he's gotten 3 towers. He's farming 12 to 13 CS per minute at this point. I mean, it's ridiculous right now.
But hasn't been able to translate that into helping out the rest of his team win, right? The first fight we see him get involved in, he gets jumped, and that's the beginning of the end of that fight for JDG. And the second one, yeah, he's able to pick up Taeyoon on the backside of that fight, but isn't matched up with the rest of his team, and ends up just getting 1 solo kill, and everybody else ended up falling. Karis is going to get collapsed on right here. He does have friends in the area, though. Monki on the way.
Okay, looks like he forces the jump out from Ala and then uses the Between Worlds to jump backwards. Now Monki, as well as Taeyoon and Vampire, hovering around the top side. Otacon right now spawned bottom, so they were just maybe looking for a potential dive onto the Jace, but will not be able to find it, so instead we'll just back away using those Hex Gates. By the way, Hextech Soul available for whoever's able to pick it up.
Yeah, being able to grab yourself that soul point as WE in 3 minutes time could be huge. Really allows them to dictate the pace of this game a little bit more. We do, of course, have ourselves the Baron spawning very soon. And Atakan is still up and available. Can be claimed by whichever team thinks it's a good idea to engage upon it. I think you're going to have to win a team fight first, so neither of these teams are far enough ahead to just go start this one up. And Atakan's always hurt. You really don't want to allow it to deal all the damage that your team then is behind once you engage in that full-on team fight. 2.5 minutes. Oh, never mind. JDG actually do feel confident to do this. They saw Monki topside, to be fair. Yeah.
Why not just go for it? I mean,
yeah, very true. Monki way out of position right here. You're going to get yourself 1 tower for it, maybe a second one. Is that worth it while as a trade? I'm not sure.
We'll see if they can get 2 here. That's big. They have 2 grubs. Yeah. They have 4 grubs, I should say, right now. So WE going to continue to push here with Karis and Monki. They will likely take down this tier 2 tower. However, now it is just a bunch of blood petals going the way of JDG. So not even the false resets here. And so we're actually at a relatively even game state here, Bloxer. Right now, the petals, again, the biggest difference maker in terms of how strong these teams are.
Oh yes, level 16 hit right here for Ala, so he is so far ahead right now. If Taeyoon or Karis step to him at any point, they're just going to get 1-tapped. Monki 2 going to be very reliant on that E invulnerability to be able to keep him alive in the face of Ala. It's just going to be on him to be able to actually get involved in these team fights. The rest of his squad haven't been able to find success without him. So Ala joining up, going to be very impactful. Like I said though, couple of towers picked up in trade for the Atakan. I think that's just about going to be worthwhile for them. It's being able to pull them almost level in terms of gold, something they haven't been since the very start of this game.
You know, if you are WE, like, I understand wanting to trade, like, for towers in terms compared to fighting for something, but you take a look at the Victor. He's level 15. He's getting his Rod of Aegis fully stacked up. All as well as now level 16, continue to stack up. These champions are starting to scale now, Bloxer, and so WE, they've been playing well with the leads that they've been able to generate, specifically in their mid jungle, but I think they've got to start to make some plays happen here, and in order to keep themselves in this position, keep that momentum flowing.
Yes, 100%. It's very much going to be on WE right now with those 2 items completed on the way to the 3rd to up the tempo of this game. They are in control of this one. They've been winning out on all of these team fights. Monki's been great, but it's very hard to catch JDG out multiple times in a row. They've been able to do it pretty effectively so far. It's very much going to take playing around these objectives to actually draw JDG out. They've been very happy to just sit back so far for good reason, right? Their composition scales incredibly well, and once it starts hitting those 3 and then even 4 items, that's where JDG are all of a sudden in a massive advantage in this game. So with the Drake spawning in less than 10 seconds time, Vampire, oh no.
Yeah, getting caught out by
He's
one of the strongest
tanky.
members of JDG right now. With the Eclipse and the Aftershock, actually doesn't take a ton of damage. However, now with your support chunk, might be a little bit hard to get to that Dragon Pit first, especially now if Missing is potentially trying to zone away Taeyoon from the fight again. Shun the one that started up. Vampire spots him out. Monki here as well. Dragon actually going to potentially be stopped here as Vampire goes all the way into Olive, but the Solar Flare doesn't connect. Here comes Cube off the teleport flank. They lock down the jungler and Shun will fall. Olive forced to flash away, but Taeyoon will go over the Killer Instinct and pick up the shutdown. He'll die in response to the Peyz, who's still full HP here on the Ezreal, but Monki's going ballistic. But can Peyz do it? He picks up one. Cube here to shut him down, and that's an ace for WE.
It's a complete mess of a team fight right now. Everybody split. At the beginning, Vampire's just in the mix, in the middle of everyone. But WE, they keep 2 members alive. They're not going to be able to grab the Drake on the back end of that one, but they will pick themselves up a ton of kills, some shutdowns, some towers as well. And this is exactly what they would have been looking for out of this team fight. WE, they don't want to be a speed bump on the way to more victories for JDG. They want to actually shut them down here. Vampire, yeah, he's so into the backline, but really, it's the damage that Monki's doing, weaving his way through this fight, that's just huge. All the way through, constantly jumping in. The dogs are just dealing so much damage, and he lives for so long. You see here, flashes away, just about survives, goes back in, gets a ton of damage off, nearly even survives this entire fight, just takes one final little bit of auto-attack damage from Peyz to die.
I mean, yeah, that's a fantastic play for Monki. We've said that this is the Monki show, and that's what we're seeing a little bit here. And by the way, that Dragon didn't end up going down, so we're going to go do it again. Shun, the one to continue to start this one off. Solar Flare does hit Ala. Will Monki get in the pit? He does. Right now, JDG are peeling away from the Drake and instead looking for the fight. Vampire very low. Zenith Blade does not connect.
Who gets it?
Worlds comes in.
Stolen!
Will be secured here by Shun, as that is now the 2nd Dragon of the game secured here for JDG. But Monki will dash in and take down Missing. Pick up a reset. But here comes JDG. They've scaled into the late game. Karis will go down, and it is 3 dead for just Missing.
Oh, WE, they had themselves in such a good position, but they go for the re-engage onto that Dragon. They don't even pick up the Drake for themselves, and they end up losing so many members that the Baron's now under threat of falling too.
And Monki's dead. It is just Taeyoon and Vampire. Vampire's been bold in terms of his decision-makings here in this game. I don't think he's this bold to go into a 2v4 with the Baron being taken down without a smite. So it will be JDG securing the big purple worm. And once again, they can breathe a little bit easier. Back up in the lead.
Oh, Monki goes flying in onto this one. It's Vampire too, stepping up, taking just a huge chunk of damage. Really nice ulti there out of Shun. And he's able to just buy enough space and get the smite off as well. And then an attempt at a re-engage here out of Monki. Yes, between Cube and Monki you do a lot of damage, but watch Monki's health bar. Now it's there, now it's not. Just gets popped, and you're melee right on top of all of these incredibly fed carries at this point for JDG. I just don't see that fight ever working out for WE.
And there's like a million things that went right on top of Monki to help burst him down. Peyz playing a big factor. He's now at 3 full items, looking for a 4th with that last Whisper completed. And now JDG can try to break this game open a little bit more. Inner towers, the first to fall on the bottom side. Jungle camp secured. stolen away here from Monki, who had himself a pretty steady go of income recently, but that's going to start to go away. You got to shout out WE here, right, Bloxer? They played these fights out, they played the skirmishes, but we did say going in that, like, once this Jace, once this Victor, once this Ezreal really come online, it's going to be much harder for WE to win any of these fights.
Exactly. These carries have now gotten to the point where they are so strong, you really need Monki and Karis to one-tap somebody. Maybe even a public execution right here out of Cube to start things off. And also, in that previous fight, Taeyoon just really wasn't able to get involved. Not like he was in the first Drake fight. The second one, he's kind of just stood there watching everything happen. You can't afford to be missing out on all of this damage that a 3-item Kai'Sa is able to do. See if he's going to be able to change that one in this next fight, as it looks like the top lane tier 2 tower is going to be the next focus for JDG. They've got everybody around in this area. They've also got a wave pouring down through the mid wave. They are in a good spot to keep the siege up at the moment.
This is the poke right now that is evident here with the Jace Ezreal that was selected early on in this draft here for JDG. True shot barrage. Chunks Taeyoon down to 30%, I should say, or even less. And that is the tier 2 turret going over for free, and now the inhibitor certainly under threat.
Now let's see if they're going to be able to crack open the base right here. It's so tricky to actually step up here as WE and clear out these Baron empowered cannon minions. Just going to be able to take down this tower. Now here comes the engage.
Only landing the engage on the missing right now, so Peyz still free to fire. That's going to shift forward and take down the Leona. Now it's the 5v4. Peyz continuing to go in. Here comes missing. No using the Magnus Storm just yet. Karis goes between worlds. Monki going way too far forward all by himself. And that should be game. It looked good for WE for a little bit. But this is JDG that we're talking about, man. They're here for way more than just the victory against World Elite. They want the game. They want the series. They want to dominate the Ascension group. And with a 2-0 over WE, they will jump up to 2-0 overall in the standings.
Oh, WE, it felt so good for them for so long. That was one of the best games that we've seen out of WE. The thing is, it works. It works versus these Group Nirvana teams that they faced during those last chance matchups in the placements. But it doesn't work versus these top tier teams. JDG, they pick it up as a 2-0, and if you're just scoreboard watching, if you're not looking in depth, you don't realize how close this one was to being a loss here for WE. Sorry, a win here for WE. It felt like they just waited too long. You really called it out well there, Grapes. They needed to start doing something. They tried, but it wasn't necessarily in the right way.
And I think part of that goes to the fact you have to give credit to JDG, who is a very good team, and their ability to stall out the game on their own was obviously very, important. But on the other side, for WE, maybe you wish you saw a little bit more, but there's also the good things that you could take away from this. There was less good things to take away from game number 1. I think after watching this game, if you're a WE fan, you can say, hey, Monki played really well in the Nefiri. Him and Karis seemed to be working well in tandem. Taeyoon had really decisive decisions to go in on the Kai'Sa, and that's like a fun thing to watch. And so take those notes, and you hopefully look ahead to the future and say, how can we apply those to maybe next time take a game off of them. These two teams are going to face off against each other in a couple weeks, as this is a double round robin in the Ascension group. And so maybe next time around, WE can learn from some of their mistakes here and learn from the things that they did well and see if they are able to do a little bit better this time.
Absolutely, because it's a really tough challenge for them to be able to pick up a victory right here up against JDG, but they've got a matchup versus NIP coming up in either tomorrow or Saturday, I think, so they've got themselves a matchup that they can genuinely win, that they could actually look towards picking one up. You don't want to be along the bottom of this group ascend. At the same time, even if you are at the bottom of it, like we've been saying, there's a lot less pressure here than there really is for all of the teams that are currently in Group Nirvana, and they've got a lot of tough matchups. The schedule isn't particularly nice for them. That's the joy of this group ascend. You have a lot of the best teams constantly facing off each other. It's good fun in that way. For WE, I think they could cause a couple of upsets, even if they're not going to be able to win full series. Even taking games off of a few people, that will be huge for the overall rankings for these top 4 teams. And if you can knock somebody down, potentially actually pick up a win versus one of these top teams, all of a sudden the standings that we think are pretty set at this point are all mixed up.
Yeah, it's not as drastic as the Nirvana group, where like a 1-4 record is so different than like a 2-3 record. if you go 10 and 8 versus what is it, 11 and 7? Like, is that the biggest deal? Maybe not as much on all things considered, but any one of these games could mean the difference between making it into the playoffs or not. Obviously, we have like a couple, like maybe probably 6 or 7, like really highly established teams at the
Yep.
top of the LPL that are likely hoping that they can get one of those first 4 spots, get themselves an advantageous spot in the playoffs to kick off the Split 2 postseason. So that's where these games can be important, specifically for a team like JDG.
Yeah, exactly. For JDG, the fact that they were taken quite so to task by WE, not going to be ideal for them, but at the same time, their composition had a lot of scaling on its side, and then also, they just sat and allowed the game to happen in a lot of ways, and it wasn't the end of the world. They were losing quite a lot of these team fights, but still, the scaling was happening. They were only down in gold for a very brief moment, only 2-3 minutes where they actually ended up down in gold, and then they were able to win that second fight. Maybe if WE make different decisions around that second re-engage onto the Hectic Drake, things are different. We're talking about a different game. Maybe we're still in the game at the moment. There's so much different. Of course, in the alternate universe of the LPL, EDG are our best team, so things would be a very different place right there.
That's a crazy
Still,
alternate universe. Yeah.
Yeah, the alternate universe, EDG, if EDG won every game that they were up in gold in, they would just be right at the top. Unfortunately, we live in this universe. We can have a look after this gold graph. This is what I'm saying, right? They were only in the gold disadvantage as JDG for like 3
Okay.
minutes. Not even. That might only be 2 minutes there.
But you take that little fraction of time and you're like, hey, that's more than it was last game, right?
That's true.
So you
That's
gotta
true.
you gotta make sure you're happy with the little things here, especially later on into the game. You take a look at Monki, led his team in terms of damage, actually really contributed to a big portion of the early advantages that WE were able to find. Remember, they were up in kills up until the very end of that game. And so
They
Bloxer,
were in a really good spot early.
yeah.
Unfortunately, as much as we had a few great moments out of Taeyoon, there were a few moments out of Taeyoon where we just need to see more from him, and that's really reflected in the damage that he dealt compared with everybody else in this game. He was half the damage that the Ezra was able to do, barely any more damage than his jungle was able to put down. You really just need more. The Kai'Sa, it forces you to go in. I think it's this fight here where he goes flying into the backline and actually gets very aggressive. I just think we need to see a little bit more from Taeyoon in terms of getting aggressive. He was very passive on the Jhin, ended up being a bit passive at points as well here on the Kai'Sa. It was a tricky game to play out. There was a lot of damage that he needed to try to avoid, but this was kind of the only very aggressive moment that we saw out of him.
That is true, and there's always that fine line you have to play when you're playing an aggressive AD carry like Kai'Sa, who can work well at close distances, but also is still an AD carry and can one shot. But
Yeah.
I definitely agree. Could have seen more on the aggressive side, especially when you have your lane partner in Vampire, who was going for those very aggressive
Yeah.
plays every single time. This guy was fearless in this
Yeah.
series and in this game specifically. Never worried about his own life, as long as it meant potentially locking down a key member, getting that crowd control chain going. That's all that Vampire wanted to do, and I think that's what results in him being kind of a controversial figure here
Yeah.
in the LPL sometimes.
Exactly. There are a few moments where we were really scratching our heads. I still want to know who hit that blast cone. I might actually go back, dig through the VODs to figure out if it was him that nearly caused his own death right there. He ended up losing his flash in a couple of interesting situations. But when it came time to actually teamfight, he was so aggressive on this Leona. Exactly what you want to see from this carry. It's unfortunate that it doesn't work out for them in the end, but potentially there's something there that you can try play around. Monki definitely looks like somebody you can try to play around.
Yeah.
He's been so much fun to watch, especially on this Neferi. I think teams going forwards need to think twice about giving Vampire over this champion. It looks like his best by far and away.
Yeah, and somebody like Monki wasn't even the starter on this roster to go into the season, right?
No.
And so was kind of a change that they made about a month and a half ago, and so far it seems like it has been bearing a decent fruit so far. And so for JDG, they get the win over WE, but I think with Monki's performance, you can still feel confident about what WE can potentially build off of here, as we are still very early on into this split number 2 regular season. Again, 17 best of 3s left for
So
WE
many.
to try to continue to figure some stuff out.
Yeah, I wonder if we could quickly pull up the standings right now before we get to the MVP. Not quite at the moment, no worries then. It's just interesting to see the way that these teams have really been shaking out, because this is now 2-0 right here for JDG. They've put themselves in a great spot. Ala.
Yeah, it goes to Ala.
You know
He was so
he
fed.
was ahead the whole game.
He had like 15 farm per minute. It was ridiculous. So
Yeah.
I guess we could give it to him just for
Truly
the farm
insane.
alone. While everybody else was like screwing around and like playing these fun little team fights that JDG like thought was for fun. Ala was like taking down turrets basically on his own. I think he took down like 5 of them by himself.
Yeah,
So
he was
that deserves some
absorbing
credit.
gold all across the map.
Yeah. I think we do have our standings graphics, so we'll try to get that aired in about a minute or so. But overall, a great day here in the LPL. Let's pull up those standings really quick as we got our second game in the Nirvana group. Congratulations to LGD once again. Still, Bloxer, 3 games in each of our Nirvana series. You think RNG versus Ultra Prime is going to hold true for that as well?
Yes, I do. I would be very surprised if either of those two teams is able to clean things up. RNG should be the better team, looking at them on paper, but Ultra Prime, they've been able to show a couple of really interesting moments. I was surprised that they weren't one of the teams that we ended up getting to see in Group Ascent. One of the bottom teams they probably would have been, but WE being there was a big surprise. RNG was the big shock though, right? Everybody was expecting RNG to make it into Group Ascent, and the fact that they're down in Group Nirvana is probably going to have annoyed them quite a lot. The threat of not getting to play in the split number 3 is huge, looming over all of these teams, and every win matters. You know, we keep talking about how these Group Ascent teams have tons of games in their future. Group Nirvana, it is single round robin, and there's only 6 teams, so you get 5 best of 3s to determine if you get to play next split. Huge pressure for all of these teams.
And don't